ACT Deputy Leader Brooke van Velden's members' bill, which would ensure 50% of the GST on a new house build would be shared with local councils, is due to have its first reading soon. Brooke van Velden joins me now. What's the point of it, the bill?
Well, the point of the bill is that we know that we have a housing crisis. We don't have enough homes for the number of New Zealanders that want to live in them. So we've got to incentivise more homes being built. Now, when I talk to anybody involved in building homes, architects, designers, plumbers, electricians, even people within council, they say that the real hold-up is because we have an infrastructure deficit in New Zealand. It's not because we need to change the planning laws radically. It's because we actually have an infrastructure deficit. And so this bill is supposed to enable local councils an incentive to get more homes consented and more homes built by addressing that infrastructure problem along the way. So our solution is giving half of the GST on every new build back to the local council that issues that consent. And on rough estimates on last year's numbers, that would be around $1.4 billion every year going back to local councils that issued the consent to help them pay for the infrastructure to connect each new home to the community.
Because the government's arguing it's dealing with infrastructure bonds, but also that housing accelerator fund. But is that not enough money coming through those sources to...
Well, the issue I think most New Zealanders have with the Housing Acceleration Fund and just centralisation in general is that we have the government saying it's got the solution to everything, and it's people down in Wellington that know how to fix your local problems and your local issues. And I don't think that's really the case. You see, the Housing Acceleration Fund is, I guess, like a slush fund of money where people have to go and ask for money, cap in hand to the government and say, will you fund the infrastructure for the projects that we have identified? And that puts a lot of power in a few hands in government. Whereas our bill says, every time a new house is built within your area, you get the money for that. It's not going to the government and specifically asking or begging for money. This is an enduring solution that goes a long way through successive governments to say that every time a new home gets built, you get money for it. So I think it's more enduring, it's more practical, and actually helps with that local control that New Zealanders are calling for.
The process you'd use is that the statistician would estimate the GST for each council, then Kaingaora would pay that money to the council and then be reimbursed by the Crown. Isn't that a little bit bureaucratic itself?
No, the way that we've looked at this is it's the most simple suggestion. Every year the government statistician already makes statistics and makes analysis on how much the value of new residential build is regarding different areas of New Zealand. We're asking them to be more specific and make it about territorial authorities and just making a little bit of a change to the models that they already use. And so that's a very anti-bureaucratic method. It's somebody who's not involved in government, not involved in bureaucracy, simply collecting how much money has been spent on new residential development and then taking 7.5% of that and giving it to the local council.
But the model, for instance, the government statistician uses already is still slightly open to question. I mean, they can't guarantee it's absolutely 100% accurate. And if they're going to go down to local councils, presumably they're going to have to be funded a bit to do that.
Well, the statistician already collects, like you say, they collect a lot of data already. I think it's a far more practical solution to make. You could talk in great detail, but this is a bill that's up for its first reading that will go through a select committee, and hopefully we would hear from the government statistician about how they would actually create a model around this. My hope is, firstly, to get it to that point where we can have a more in-depth discussion about how this will function in practice. But overall, I think what New Zealanders are really crying out for is that we can fix the housing crisis. And because we have an infrastructure crisis, we're not building as much as we need. So we need innovative solutions to allow for council to get the vital funding it needs for the vital infrastructure. I'm not seeing that coming from government at the moment. All I'm seeing is government wanting more control over local councils, more control over where houses get built, where the infrastructure gets built, and going against and on top of what the local councils are calling for. We're hoping to work with local council to enable them to build in areas that the community have determined where more homes should be built.
Well, making reference to that first reading, obviously, I mean, you're going to have to get a majority in Parliament to get there, and that means you'd have to have the government, Labor, vote for it. Have you got any sense whether you've got the support to get this bill to a through its first reading into the Select Committee?
Yeah, well, I've had some feedback from parliamentary colleagues across the House where the Greens Party have said that they will support us. The National Party have said that they will support us. Unfortunately, I haven't heard back from the government on whether or not they would support us. I'm going to take a gamble and say that this will go against what their current housing policies are. So I'm hesitant to say that they would support it, but we can always have hope. But what I'm really hoping for here is to set the agenda for what ACT can do in the next government, which is provide innovative, enabling solutions for local councils, for people who want to have their first home and are wondering why it's taking so long for councils to actually issue them a consent to build. We've got to make housing faster for people, and we've got to make it more enduring so it goes above and beyond what everyday government can do. Let's have an enduring, long-lasting solution to funding infrastructure so we can fund houses.
So as part of the deal with the bill is that the money that the councils get back in GST, they're bound to spend it on infrastructure for housing?
Well, they will. I mean, one of the things here is if you end up building more homes in your area, you will get more money every time
so
you
the
build a new
incentive for
home.
them is to
yeah, that's right. And if
consent
you
houses quickly because they're going to get a...
Yeah, I mean, if you already know that you have an infrastructure deficit, here is money coming to you when you build a new home in your area. I mean, why would a council then say, no, we don't want to use the money to pay for infrastructure when they know that that's the constraint that's stopping houses being built? If you then use that money for infrastructure, you're going to see overall more enablement for more housing and more money overall. So a smart council would recognise the money used for infrastructure will mean they get more money over time.
Brooke van Velden, thank you for your time.
Thank you.